Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, last warnings. President Trump urges Hamas to release the remaining hostages as Israel strikes Gaza City, the terror group's last stronghold. Meanwhile, a terror attack in Jerusalem claims the lives of 6 Israelis. Plus, Oren Seliger on the status of sovereignty in Israel's biblical heartland, Judea and Samaria. And new Democratic voices rising in support of Israel. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. In an unprecedented strike, the IDF and Israeli intelligence say they conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization. The attack took place in Doha, the capital of Qatar. Israel says for years these members of the Hamas leadership have led the terrorist organization's operations and are directly responsible for the brutal October 7th massacre and have been orchestrating and managing the war against the state of Israel. It added prior to the strike, measures were taken in order to mitigate harm to civilians, including the use of precise munitions and additional intelligence. The state of Qatar says it condemns in the strongest possible way the cowardly Israeli attack targeting residential buildings housing several members of the Hamas political bureau. Joining me to discuss is Eugene Kontorovich, senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Eugene, your reaction. This is huge news.
Chris, this is the beginning of true justice for the October 7th attacks. The people who were killed in today's attacks are the top brass of Hamas. They're the people who organized, who authorized the October 7th attack. They are the Adolf Hitler, let's say, of the Islamo-fascist regime of Hamas. And finally, they're being called to account. They've been called to account. They were based in Qatar. And Qatar is a complicated country because on one hand, it sponsors Islamic terrorism like Hamas. On the other hand, using its great wealth, it also makes inroads in the West, and there's a major U.S. military base there. So Hamas thought this was a perfect place for them to be based. They like to be based under hospitals and schools because they think they're not going to be attacked there. And they thought, what better place to be based than Qatar, a country with a U.S. military base there. And that did protect them for a while. But it's clear that their complete refusal to bring this war to any end, the war they started, has made President Trump's patience run out. And clearly the United States, which did not carry out this attack, gave the green light to Israel to do what Israel has long wanted to do and cut off the head of the snake.
Was there any surprise to you in just about 30 seconds, Eugene, that they would actually go ahead and hit them actually in Doha, which has been sheltering them for years?
It's only a surprise because we're still not used to taking President Trump at his word. He said yesterday there needs to be a complete end of the war. There needs to be a release of all the hostages. Hamas needs to stop with its excuses. This is his last ultimatum. There'll be consequences. That was yesterday. Today, Hamas said no to the deal he proposed, and this is the consequence.
Yeah. Eugene, thanks for your analysis on this breaking news story.
Thank you for having me.
Well, after President Trump's last warning to Hamas to accept the hostage deal, the IDF has leveled dozens of high-rises in Gaza City. And while Israel is still recovering from yesterday's terror attack in Jerusalem, the United Nations General Assembly, set to open tonight, plans to vote on recognizing a Palestinian state. Here's the latest on all these and other stories. In addition to murdering multiple Israelis, the 2 Palestinians injured nearly 20 others. The terrorists boarded a bus and began shooting before they were eliminated. The terror attack follows a Houthi drone strike Sunday that hit the airport near the resort town of Eilat. While Israel faces multiple terror attacks, President Trump sounded optimistic about a deal to free the hostages.
We're trying to get it ended, get the hostages back, get it ended. We got them all back, but 20. And as you know, we have 20, plus there are a lot of, unfortunately, dead bodies involved. And they want them back. The parents want them back. So we had some very good discussions, good things that happened.
On Truth Social, Trump issued a strong warning. Everyone wants the hostages home. Everyone wants this war to end. The Israelis have accepted my terms. It is time for Hamas to accept as well. I have warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. This is my last warning. There will not be another one. Hamas responded by saying it will immediately sit at the negotiating table to discuss the release of all prisoners in exchange for a clear declaration of the end of the war and a complete withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Trump's warning comes as Israel continues its campaign to take over Hamas's last major stronghold, Gaza City. The IDF has destroyed a number of high-rise buildings in Gaza City and released this video showing how Hamas uses them as military headquarters. Israel is warning Gazans to leave the city to get them out of harm's way. So far, about 100,000 have left, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas is trying to get them to stay.
To remain there so that they can serve as a human shield for them. Incidentally, it does not skimp on means. We only recently saw that it shoots women and children in the legs and, if necessary, shoots them.
Netanyahu also admitted because of the war, Israel is paying a high price in the diplomatic and propaganda fields. He says the best way to fight this is a quick end to the war and victory.
If I have to choose between victory over our enemies and bad propaganda against us, I choose victory over our enemies, rather than the opposite. I don't want articles that we are defeated by our enemies and that we receive good obituary articles in the world media. I choose victory.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog visited those wounded in Monday's terror attack. 2 Palestinian gunmen murdered 6 people and injured more than a dozen others when they opened fire on a bus and crowded bus stop. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a difficult day in Israel's war on terror.
My instruction is to go strongly against the nests of terror. We've already eliminated nests of terror in 3 refugee camps. We simply evacuated the population from there and flattened all the terror infrastructure, and my instruction is to do the same in other nests of terror.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the terror attack, according to his spokesman.
He conveys his heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a full and speedy recovery to those who were wounded.
European leaders also condemned the terror attack and called for a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The EU said the attack shows how necessary and critical a ceasefire is. On Tuesday, the IDF issued its largest evacuation order yet to the residents of Gaza City, a sign a ground invasion may be imminent.
And so I say to the residents of Gaza, I'm taking advantage of this opportunity, and listen to me carefully. You've been warned. Get out of there.
Overnight, the IDF blew up another tower in Gaza where it says Hamas established military infrastructure to carry out terrorist attacks against IDF troops in the area. Beneath the building, it maintained a site used as a gathering point for terrorists.
I promised you a few days ago that we would bring down the terror towers in Gaza. That's exactly what we're doing. In the last 2 days, 50 such towers have fallen. The Air Force has taken them down.
In his warning, Netanyahu said bringing down the buildings was just a prelude to the main ground operation. 4 Israeli soldiers were killed in an attack on their tank on Monday. In the UK, the British government says Israel is not committing genocide in Gaza. The new ruling differs from the government's previous position, which said that only the courts could make that determination. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Is the secular media biased? With 50 years of journalism experience under his belt, Elli Wohlgelernter should know. CBN's Paul Petit talks with him about the current state of news reports coming out of Gaza and the Israel-Hamas war.
Elli, thanks so much for being here today. Looking
Pleasure.
forward to your insight. Okay, 50 years in journalism, both stateside in America and here with the Jerusalem Post. That's a lot of years. You're watching the media in action with everything that's happening in Gaza. You're seeing what's coming out on all the different outlets, including the AP on down. In a nutshell, real quick, before we dive in deeper, what's your take?
The media as a whole, I have to say, after 50 years, I have less and less respect for the media. It's, especially in the 21st century, it's pretty agenda-driven. And so I know, because I've been on the street, the things that they're saying and how they're reporting, and especially out of Gaza, it's a false narrative, period. to understand that almost everything, I mean almost, we're talking 97%, of everything that comes out of Gaza is manipulated and controlled. Because if you are an independent journalist in Gaza, you will not survive.
And I don't think people know that.
No, they don't.
And they don't know that how the information, they just assume that we have reporters everywhere in Gaza independently reporting, but yet the information comes from the health ministry there, right? And then it comes from Gaza journalists. And so when you hear those are the sources, what does that necessarily mean based on your experience?
Anything that comes out of Gaza is controlled. There's no independence, none. None. Israel's not allowing, so far, has not been allowing journalists to go in. They now say they might. The only ones we know from an affiliate would be al-jazeera. Al-jazeera is the mouthpiece of the Muslim Brotherhood. They're in bed with Hamas. Everything out of Hamas is controlled. If anyone is independent, they will be thrown out.
Big news now is at Al Jazeera, several of them journalists, quote-unquote journalists, one of them very well-known journalist, was killed in an airstrike. IDF is saying that he was actually an operative. He operated a cell, was taking a salary from Hamas. This stuff happens?
This is every day. This is everybody. That's what I mean by there's no independence. They're all part of the apparatus of Hamas. Even when you say the Gaza Health Ministry, there's no such thing. It's the Hamas Health Ministry. There's no independent Gaza Health Ministry. Hamas controls every single aspect of life. Every single aspect of life.
This is a little bit of an inside newsroom, but I think it's important for people to understand what goes on because, again, if it's coming from the health ministry, if it's coming from Gaza, and then it gets sent to the people that connect with AP, right? These are their stringers, as we say in the business. And then everybody, the entire global media relies on the AP.
Absolutely.
And it gets disseminated through the AP. Does AP have an agenda?
Again, they couldn't operate, their stringer couldn't operate if they weren't playing the game. So when Hamas releases numbers, whether it's starvation, numbers of killed, etc., they're making up numbers. They're making up numbers. And it just gets repeated and repeated and repeated. You ask, does AP have an agenda? Journalism as a whole is pretty much a dead business as it was once looked at, which was search for truth, stating facts, reporting facts, getting two sides of a story. Here it's whatever they're told, they'll repeat. Not so much what Israel tells them they'll repeat, but certainly whatever Hamas tells them. If you're not telling the story that Hamas is a terrorist organization, then you're not telling the story. You're doing their bidding. You are helping them in putting out false information whose total objective is to make Israel look bad.
Now, Netanyahu, in one of his recent press conferences, has said he will allow foreign journalists to go into Gaza. So a lot of people have been wondering up to this point, okay, well, open the floodgates so we can go in and seek the truth. But you gave me an interesting take in there, given by your experience as a journalist here in Jerusalem.
There's a problem. I mean, as a journalist, of course, you want access, you want to be able to tell the story. If a Western journalist is killed in any way, the outpour and anger will be even greater. And that's my fear.
So for anybody watching, listening right now, where do you get information that you feel you could trust?
Excellent question. Everyone has to go find their own. Because of social media, you can find information from all kinds of outlets or individuals. Mm-hmm. You can't trust the mainstream media. You just can't. You just can't. They're concerned more with first, not with facts.
Elli, thanks so much for your time and your insight. 50 years in journalism, you should know.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
October 7th changed the lives of all Israelis, and for our next guest, it caused him to walk away from a very successful career in high tech. He changed tracks and pivoted to advancing stability and security in Judea and Samaria. Here's part of our conversation about why that's so important. Tell us where the movement for sovereignty is right now. We understand that just a few weeks ago, the Knesset voted in a declaration to declare sovereignty, Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley. So where is it now?
Sure. So it's about time, because every Israeli living in Judea and Samaria should have the same rights and abilities as Israelis living in pre-67 Israel, in the sense that my prime minister should not be the military, it should be Netanyahu. I should have the same services and capabilities and security, etc. We also know that after October 7th, the dream or the fantasy of a second Palestinian state between Iraq and the ocean is not feasible. We understand that from the polling that's done, not by us, but by the PA and the UN, that the support for October 7th Hamas raid on the Gaza envelope in Judea and Samaria is even higher than it is in Gaza. The dream and the fantasy of doing a similar attack from Judea and Samaria into central Israel is higher than it ever has been.
This is among the Palestinians, right?
Among the Palestinians,
yes,
obviously. And we understand that there's a need to make sure that doesn't happen. We have to basically end that dream and end that fantasy. The way to do that is to make it clear that we are here and we are here to stay. We do that by declaring sovereignty on Judea and Samaria. That resolves the issue of citizens living in Judea and Samaria getting the same rights, etc., and services as the rest of the country. But it also puts an end to the dream of a second Palestinian state. And now the Palestinians or the Arabs living in Judea and Samaria can make a decision whether they want to somehow be part of this. And there are different solutions. One of the solutions is Mordechai Kedar's solution, which I'm sure you've heard of, the Emirate solution, where you have different city-states. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, by the way, that people may not know is that there is really no connection between the Arabs living across Judea and Samaria. The Arabs living in the southern Judea and Samaria have Egyptian family names. Those living in Jenin and Tulkarem have Syrian family names. Arab families living in Jenin don't marry into families living in Hebron, because they're different tribes. They don't intermarry. And that's why you'll see the sheikh from Hebron came forward and said, I want to have a city-state. I will not be part of the PA. We will have zero tolerance for terror. I want my people to be able, in my city, to be able to work in Israel. We'll have zero tolerance. We will change our educational system. We don't believe in the corrupt Palestinian Authority. And these were secret conversations happening over 6 months already. And now they've come out. There's another sheikh in Jericho that wants to do the same thing. And again, I'm not sure what that solution will be in the end. But first of all, our Knesset has to make a decision that a declaration of sovereignty now becomes actual law. And then we'll have various committees within the Knesset deciding, how do we roll that out? Do we roll that out sovereignty on the entire Judea and Samaria? Do we include just the Jewish settlements and areas, or do we also include the Arab areas? Or how do we engage with that, and how do we move that forward? We don't want to rule 1.5 million or 1.2 million Arabs that live today in Judea and Samaria. We want them to have self-governance, but an understanding that it's a civilian government and not a national government, and they have to accept that. Declaring sovereignty makes that clear to them, that there's no opportunity in the future going forward for a Palestinian state, another second Palestinian state between Iraq and the ocean, and thereby accept this. If you don't, you can join your brethren from Gaza, who, as was announced, there are multiple countries who will be taking them in, and they'll have opportunities outside of the country if that's what they want to do.
Okay. Oren Seliger, thanks for joining us. Thanks for bringing us up to date on sovereignty.
Excellent. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
At a time when some conservatives are turning their backs on Israel, others rise to the occasion from among the Democrats. One such example is Richie Torres, an emerging young leader and congressman from the Bronx, New York City. CBN's Michelle London has the story.
Thousands of miles away from the Bronx, Torres also keeps a close watch on the crisis surrounding the people in a country close to his heart. The congressman has spent the past decade traveling to parts of Israel and tells CBN News a conversation with a local mayor there helped shape his views and unwavering support for its people.
He said to me something that I've never forgotten. He said that the majority of his children struggle with post-traumatic stress because families like his live under the threat of relentless rocket fire. And I come from the Bronx, which can be a rough neighborhood. You know, I have family and friends and neighbors who live in fear of guns and bullets. But no American lives in fear of rockets. Before you rush to judge Israel, you should actually go there, speak to both Israelis and Palestinians, speak to Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs, go to the Old City, go to the Masada, go to Yad Vashem, go to State Road, see the facts on the ground with your own eyes, and I guarantee you, if you have an open heart and an open mind, you will come to realize that the reality of Israel is far more complicated than the caricature that percolates on social media platforms and on college campuses.
Have you received any backlash from your own party on these views, or have they been pretty supportive?
So look, I face hatred from the extremes of both of the political spectrum. There is no topic on which I face more hate, harassment, and even death threats than on the subject of Israel. I've had my office vandalized. I've been ambushed outside my home. My mother's been the target of harassment. There was an activist who said, "You're a genocide mother. You should have aborted your son." I've lost relationships both in my family and friendships because the issue is so emotionally charged. But I feel like I've taken a principled position in favor of what is right.
Torres says he won't allow that violence or hatred to stop him from standing for what's right, reminding Americans that October 7th was a crime against humanity that must never be forgotten and never be repeated.
Do you agree with Netanyahu's handling of some of the ceasefire agreements?
Just like I have criticisms of the American government, I have criticisms of the Israeli government. But I love America and I love Israel. Ask yourself, how would you feel in the face of such overwhelming terror and violence? And how would you expect your government to respond to defend you and the people you love? The primary responsibility for the war in Gaza lies with Hamas. And that's a fact that should never be forgotten. And I feel like if you were Rip Van Winkle and you've been asleep since 2020 and you woke up and you saw the media coverage, you would think that October 7th had never happened, that Israel just one day decided to wage a war of aggression on Palestinians.
In addition to trauma, stress from anti-Israel media coverage, October 7th and nearly 2 years of war had also had a devastating financial impact on many Israeli families. To ease that burden, CBN Israel has partnered with an organization to provide daily school meals for underprivileged children. Take a look.
Today, CBN Israel prepared nutritious sandwiches for hundreds of Israeli school children suffering from hunger. The staff worked together to make the sandwiches, which would help the children get through the school day while relieving the financial burden on their families. This project is part of an ongoing partnership with an organization that runs this program daily.
We provide breakfast for unprivileged children all around Israel, children who have food insecurity. So we give breakfast for them in school. 17,000 kids receive full breakfast every day from Levet. And what we're meaning is to give them the opportunity to learn and to focus on studying and not to care about the food and the other aspects. So CBN, the donation, gives us the opportunity to subsidize those breakfasts to the school. And also they help us to make sandwiches, which is great and helps the school a lot. So first of all, thank you for your donation and your help. It helps us a lot to create this program and to increase our activity all around Israel. It's just their meaning and they're willing to help. It's very, very grateful, and we are so thankful for that. They just help a child in the end to study and to change his future. I mean, this is how people and kids can create better future for them. So when they eat healthy food and they can concentrate on school, this is the way to shape your future and build a better future for yourself. And you can do that with thousands of kids every day, so it's amazing impact.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blasts so you can continue to receive all of our exciting news and updates. And please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, for protection for Israel, and that all the hostages would be brought home safely and soon. I'm Chris Mitchell. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.